You. Welcome, everyone, to the first day of this week's conference. I'm Dr. Susan Jodry. I'm the Director of Partnership and Learner Engagement with Beyond the Professoriate. And I'm joined today by my colleague, Dr. Diane Sepakishi, who will be watching the Q&A and the chat for any questions. Thank you to all of you who pre-submitted questions as well. It gave us a really good idea of the types of information that you're all looking for, some of your concerns. And so we've used those questions to help us tailor these webinars to some of those questions that you asked. So throughout the webinar, we'll be responding to some of those questions, but also as we go through, if you think of anything else you want to ask, we should have time at the end to cover some of the common questions that we're getting in the Q&A or in the chat. So today we're going to start off by thinking about, whoops, let's come back for a second, what employers actually value about your degree. And this might be surprising for some people if you are just starting to think about non-academic employment. And so first we're going to talk about what non-academic employers actually value, because it looks different than what we've experienced in academia. And then sometimes we hear from PhDs that they feel like they might be overqualified, or maybe they've been told that they're underqualified. And so we're going to talk about why that is and kind of dismiss some of these myths, but give you some really good strategies for understanding how you can think about your own skills and experience so that you are actually maybe more qualified than you think. And then we're going to end up talking about how to communicate what you do to employers. And of course, this is the first day of the conference. And so this is going to just give you a taste. And then you definitely want to come back for the other days because we'll get kind of deeper into some of this information. So we're going to start by looking at why non-academic employers value skills over credentials when they're hiring. We're going to start by looking at the type of criteria that connects with non-academic employers' business objectives. So non-academic employers evaluate candidates based on their overall goals. So whether it's a nonprofit or a for-profit, government agency, they're all looking for people who can advance the mission and goals of their organization, maintain a competitive edge in the marketplace, generate revenue and grow the organization, deliver products and services that address a need in society. To maintain a competitive edge, employers are going to need to find people who can help deliver products or services that help solve a specific problem that society or consumers have. So, nonprofits, for-profits, and government agencies, they all exist to solve problems. A company that manufactures solar panels are offering a solution to homeowners who need to power their houses but want to do so with green energy. Dog food companies, they provide healthy food for people's pets. And nonprofits, some nonprofits help children learn how to read. Other nonprofits help connect people in the community to the resources that they need. And to stay in business, organizations, they need to be flexible or agile and innovate to maintain a competitive edge. So they're going to be looking for talented people that can help the organization stay viable and meet its mission. This is going to help the company generate revenue. And at the end of the day, if a company fails to offer an innovative solution to a problem, and if it can't grow and change to meet its clients' needs, it's going to fail. So all organizations, again, whether they're for-profit, nonprofit, or government, they all need revenue to pay the bills and make payroll. And this is often missed by job candidates, but organizations invest a lot of time and money creating a unique culture that attracts talent. So all organizations also have some sort of mission or mandate. Professional hiring is often driven by skills and experience. So employers are going to want to see that a candidate has the right skills and competencies to be successful in a specific role. Experience is the best predictor of success. So do you have a proven track record of success in a similar or adjacent position? Employers want to see an ability to grow. So typically, when applying for jobs, the expectation is that you're going to have about 50% of the qualifications. If you have 100% of what the job asks, then it's likely that you might have too much experience and could become bored in the role. So employers want to hire people who are going to find the work really rewarding and engaging and who have the capacity to grow in the position. And cultural fit, or sometimes called workplace fit, is a very important part of hiring. So people are building teams and they want a new hire to be able to work with an existing team. So are you going to be able to work with the existing team and do your workplace values align with those of the organization? This is what employers are going to be looking for, the types of criteria that they use. So the cost of graduate education and student loan debt are key contributing factors to a decline on return on investment of graduate education. We're also seeing a decline in the wage premium for graduate degrees. But why is that? Well, one reason is that employers are shifting from hiring based on credential to skill-based hiring. In survey after survey, employers say that they value evidence that a candidate has applied skills and knowledge in a real world setting. So NACE surveyed employers and hiring managers just last year and found that less than half used GPA to screen recent graduates. That's down from 75% who used GPA as part of the screening process in 2019. In the same survey, NACE found that 65% of companies now use skill-based hiring. And in a survey of employers conducted by Deloitte in 2023, 81% said that skills matter more than credentials when hiring and promoting employees. And 94% of hiring managers said that skills-based hires outperform those selected based on degrees or years of experience. So this is changing how people are being hired into jobs and the types of credential or the types of criteria, excuse me, that employers are looking for. So it's really important to identify our skills. And often when people think of their skills, they think about just their technical or what are sometimes called their hard skills. But technical skills are only one kind of skill that employers look for. And if you only focus on those technical skills, but avoid interpersonal skills or personal qualities, it's going to be really difficult for you to stand out as a job candidate. So technical skills, they're acquired through training. Typically, you'll demonstrate that you have these skills on your resume by either earning a degree or a certificate, or maybe through a portfolio. So there are things like project management or languages, including computer languages, research and reporting, or editing and copy editing. Interpersonal skills are equally important. So when you read job ads, employers usually list these skills right alongside with the technical skills. They're the behaviors and traits that you use to interact with and communicate with others. And since all jobs require interaction with and communication with others, that's one of the expectations, these skills are really important for you to develop. They include things like communication, problem solving, time management, and collaboration. And then there are personal qualities, which are usually innate to an individual. And they're an important part of determining if a candidate is going to be a good workplace fit for the organization. So things like being a team player, creativity, taking initiative, or being diplomatic. These are key personal qualities that employers in North America value. This is obviously not an exhaustive list of skills, but in a couple slides, I'm going to show you the skills that employers say that are in the most demand for them. But first, I also want to talk a bit about when employers are asked specifically about the types of knowledge they value in employees. 66% that knowledge gained from addressing real life problems is really important. Only 55% said interdisciplinary thinking. Less than half valued STEM disciplinary knowledge, and around one-third said liberal arts disciplinary knowledge. So it's not about your subject matter expertise or necessarily your disciplinary knowledge, but the things that you have done during your degree, those skills and experiences that you've acquired. So you really want to consider how you've applied your skills and knowledge while becoming an expert in your field. The American Association of Colleges and Universities asked employers this question. When thinking about the skills that are most likely to signal a strong job candidate, how important are the following? And so these are some of the top skills that employers value: oral communication, adaptability and flexibility, the ability to work in teams, critical thinking, motivation and initiative, written communication, cultural humility, which is also sometimes called cultural competency, creative thinking, complex problem solving, and digital literacy. So you'll notice that the majority of these skills are interpersonal, not technical. So you want to think about and identify your range of skills, not just those technical skills, because even for more technical positions, employers value interpersonal skills. For those of you who are coming out of programs that are more theoretical, you can see that you have many skills employers value and that your program's given you opportunities to apply those skills. So being able to ask good questions, to be able to adapt to new circumstances or changes, recognizing patterns or connections, these are all things that are very important to problem solving. So right now is a really good time to start considering these particular skills and looking for opportunities in your program to start cultivating these skills and finding ways to apply them. I'm going to give you some ideas of how you can do that at the end of today's webinar. But next, I want to tackle this overqualified or underqualified question. So, why is it that people outside of academia sometimes say that PhDs and postdocs are overqualified or underqualified? How can it appear to be both? That's what we're going to talk about next. Something that's important to keep in mind is that your backup plan or your plan B was someone else's plan A. So many of us, when we're going through our doctoral programs, we're very excited about our academic research and we're very excited about our disciplinary expertise. Many of us want to be faculty or at some point wanted to be faculty, at least when we started our PhDs. But maybe at this point, you're thinking, no, I know about academic careers. That's not a good fit for me. So things can change along the way. Now you're looking at potentially transitioning out of an academic career. So you're in a career transition. You're working. You have a career, you're successful junior scholars, and now you're looking to do something else. But most professional careers also require specialized knowledge and training, just like in academia. So each industry requires special skills, training, and even has their own language. So, how can you learn all this for a new industry? Well, it's going to take some time. It's about reading yourself into a new career field, and it's about learning the language of that industry so you can translate your skills and experience into a language that non-academic employers are going to understand. So, this could be for someone moving from an English PhD to digital marketing, but same with people who are looking to move into data science. You've done data analysis while you've been in the lab, but you need to translate all those things that you've done into the language of a specific industry because non-academic employers don't always fully understand all the things that you've been doing during your PhD or postdoc. Because what is a PhD? Well, it's highly specialized training to become an academic. It's on-the-job training for a specific professional career. You're applying your skills to become an expert in your field. So, to become an anthropologist or a historian or a physicist, you're building and applying skills in a very specific setting, which is academia, to become an expert in your field. So when you get your PhD, that's the recognition that you've successfully applied your skills in the specific academic environment. You're learning a specific industry discourse about how to navigate higher ed. So you probably know who the dean is and some of what they might do, who the provost is, the chair of your department. You understand which journals to publish in and which conferences you should present at. And you understand how to put together a CV. This is a very specific industry discourse, and you know how to navigate that discourse because you've been living in academia while you've been doing your academic training. And you were rewarded and evaluated with grades and degrees. So this is a challenge with the credential. It's the way that we reward people in the academy for successfully applying their skills to become experts in their field. But it doesn't always translate because outside of academia, people get things like pay raises or different titles when they advance or when they've been successful. So a PhD is a highly specialized credential. So you can also think about it this way. If there was someone who was a digital marketer and they wanted to become an assistant professor of literature, what would happen? Well, they'd be told to apply for a graduate program. They might have the right skills, they don't have the right industry knowledge. So they've proven that they've applied their skills with success in the appropriate environment. They haven't shown that they've mastered a certain body of literature, and so they wouldn't be eligible to become an assistant professor of literature right away. They'd be asked to take what is essentially an entry-level position, which is to become a graduate student in order to learn and grow, and then eventually be qualified to apply for an assistant professor position. So it's very similar when we're going the other way as well. We're a PhD in the academy, and we're trying to become a digital marketer, but we're missing all of that highly specialized knowledge and training that digital marketers have. We haven't demonstrated or applied our skills with success in the same way that a digital marketer has. So this is the challenge with assuming that a PhD is an all-purpose degree. When you're changing careers or in career transition, you're going to need to spend some time reading yourself into a new career field and getting some linear work experience in order to be really successful in your applications. So you can think about this again. A digital marketer and a literary scholar are both able to and apply solutions to solve problems. They write and edit documents. They facilitate training sessions or teach students. They make data-informed decisions. And they can create slide decks and presentations and then present information to large and small groups. But they also do lots of other things. So what's different? Well, the specialized knowledge, theories, and practices, the application of those skills for very different deliverables and outcomes. Sometimes it's the use of specific tools and technologies in those roles. Definitely different work styles and different cultures. And the education and training is very specific and unique. So, it's not that PhDs are overqualified. They're actually over-credentialed. So we have highly specialized training and education that employers aren't looking for in candidates. And the credential isn't a substitution for that on-the-job training. And when you hear that you're underqualified, well, you're actually under linear work experienced. So you have the skills, you just haven't been applying them in the way that employers are expecting from job candidates. So you have a lot of work experience, but it's just not specific to that industry. And it's not for the positions that you want to apply for. So this is a misalignment that often both employers and job candidates don't always fully understand. So hopefully this gives you a bit more clarity around that. So let's just compare the candidates again. So the digital marketer, they have experience driving strategy and developing marketing campaigns. They have knowledge of how to build pipelines, funnels, and measure KPIs. Those are key performance indicators. They know what KPIs are. They have proven ability to collaborate with cross-functional teams. And maybe some of them have 10 years or more of industry experience. PhD in the academy has experience developing and designing courses and research projects. They're knowledgeable about subject matter expertise. They've won teaching awards and published in leading journals. And they have a PhD. So this is a translation problem. If the digital marketer is trying to become an academic, they don't have the things that the academics are looking for. If a PhD is looking to become a digital marketer, they don't necessarily have the things that a digital marketing agency is expecting. So we're speaking two languages. As PhDs, we need to learn the language, expectations, and culture of another career field so we can communicate well with employers. So now let's look at 3 steps you can take to help you communicate your skills and potential to non-academic employers. Because you have acquired a lot of skills and applied those skills, the types of skills that employers are looking for. Now you need to be able to let them know that you have done that and how you've done that. So starting off, you can start to identify one career field and focus your job search. This is going to result in a more successful job search. We often think of career options for PhDs as two sides of a circle or two choices. So on the one hand, there are faculty jobs, you need to apply. PhD or postdoc will create a portfolio of documents like a CV or a cover letter, research and teaching statements, a teaching portfolio. And then many incorrectly believe that a non-academic job search is as simple as converting a CV into a resume and applying for jobs found online. But that's not going to be very successful, and tomorrow you can learn more about resumes. But full-time academic jobs are actually only 1% of positions in the United States. So when you think about a non-academic career, what you're doing is evaluating and then selecting from the 99% of professional careers that exist. Nearly 80 million Americans work in jobs that the Bureau of Labor Statistics classifies as professional careers. So that means they require and benefit from an advanced degree. So non-academic careers, they're not monolithic, they're highly specialized. And to be successful in applying for a non-academic job, you're going to need to identify one career field to focus your job search because, as I mentioned, you're going to need to spend some time learning the foundational knowledge of that career field. It's a lot to learn the field of one career, like project management, or technical writer, or data scientist, but it's almost impossible to learn all three in enough detail to really impress a hiring manager. So you're also going to need to build a network of professionals who can help you in your job search. We're going to have a webinar on networking, so make sure you come to that. Over 85% of jobs, here's a little teaser, are filled through networks and referrals. So again, building that new network of project managers is going to take time. It's not something you can reasonably do for many career fields. So you really want to focus it down. So you can start researching career options by speaking to alumni or PhDs with similar academic backgrounds. You can take a look at the interview library that I showed you at the beginning of the webinar. You can identify major industries or employers where you live or where it is that you want to live. You can start evaluating opportunities. So is it a career field that's growing, or is it actually in decline? Because if it's in decline, there's going to be fewer opportunities for you. You want to avoid those unicorn jobs. So the jobs where there's just one person, whoever does that job, and they stay in that role for 25, 30 years. And you should be open to go the path of least resistance, excuse me, because you do have those skills and that experience that you have been cultivating in academia that will translate to another field. You just need to figure out where those skills and the things that motivate you, where that's going to map onto best. There are lessons in the platform that can help you get you started. And so in step 2, that's the research stage, there's a number of lessons that are going to help you start researching different career options and narrowing down which career you want to move into. And you're going to want to identify your transferable skills. So consider what skills employers value in your chosen career field. So that focused career field where you want to move next. And you're going to think about which skills you already have. You can do this by reflecting on the work you do as a graduate student or postdoc. You want to include coursework and research, writing, teaching, and service to the profession. And you want to identify how you applied your skills with success and what was the impact. Not everything's going to be relevant, and that's totally okay. But you also want to identify some gaps. So you're going to ask your network, what is make or break in that career field? Like, what skills do you absolutely need to have? And you need to be able to demonstrate that you've used them successfully. And then you can start creating a plan. There's a really helpful lesson in step one in the platform. It's called What Are Your Most Marketable Skills? And it will guide you through different ways of thinking about what the skills are that you have, how to identify them, and then how you can start to communicate them to employers. And finally, you're going to start reading yourself into that new chosen career field. So it's really important that you gain a working knowledge of your new career because then you can effectively translate your skills and experience and demonstrate your potential to employers. Now, if you're someone who's concerned about skill development, maybe I went through this list of skills and you're like, I can't think of a time where I actually collaborated with anyone. Well, the good news is you can build marketable skills now. And so for those of you who have gone through the process of narrowing down your options and thinking of that one career field of interest, you want to spend some time reading job ads for that career field and thinking more about the skills that are listed in those ads. You can also reach out to people who work in that career field and talk to them about their job and career path. And again, we have a webinar on networking that you're going to want to attend to prompt you to do that. And if you haven't narrowed down your search to a specific career field, you can read job ads more widely, speak to a variety of people who are working in a number of different roles, and you'll start to see a pattern for the skills that are most in demand, regardless of the role or company or industry, things like communication or collaboration. Then you can come back to the work that you're already doing as a PhD or postdoc, and then think about where you're building those skills. So in research, we all do some sort of research during our PhD or postdoc. And although the methods and techniques are different from discipline to discipline, when you think about these types of skills employers look for in the career field you're interested in, they might include things like leadership, collaboration, marketing, ethical judgment, time management, and organization skills, which can all be part of our research, regardless of our research method. So you want to consider how you've developed and applied these skills in your research and how you can do it now in a more intentional and conscious way. For example, when someone asks to collaborate on a conference presentation, if it makes sense, you can say yes, and there's your opportunity to build collaboration skills. You're going to want to be strategic to take on additional opportunities to build the skills that you might be missing or need to develop. So, for example, if you need more opportunities to develop leadership, maybe you chair a committee or you take an opportunity to mentor undergrads. So, these are also additional tasks that require some ethical judgment, another great skill. Or maybe you'll take on social media for your lab or department because you're really interested in marketing. So I know you're already really busy as doctoral students, as postdocs, and sometimes it doesn't allow time to take on a side job, for example. So you can consider how you can build these marketable skills through your current commitments. So when we talk about teaching, we know that public speaking, communication, sometimes instructional design, facilitation, and management are really valuable skills. You're doing that already by teaching, but maybe you're not doing it in a really conscious way. So there could be other opportunities too with your campus's Center for Teaching and Learning to facilitate workshops or to help coordinate a conference. And then also looking for other opportunities on campus. Maybe you can volunteer with a student group or take on responsibilities like a research assistantship in your department to build up these additional skills. It was through my research assistantships that I learned useful copy editing skills and took on editing work for a while. So maybe you could help organize the graduate student conferences or create a community of practice for teaching assistants. So taking the things that you're already doing or be able to fit into your what the things that you already know how to do are ways to build some of these skills. So it's always good because you're so busy to start by considering what it is that you're already doing. And then think about gaining those additional experiences. You can also look for opportunities to apply your skills outside of an academic setting. So, volunteering with nonprofits or startups that need help. When we interview PhDs, we hear a lot of examples of people who do this. Maybe in a small tech company, maybe they have friends or family that are doing this type of work and they can get involved and build some skill sets while helping a company or organization. Obviously, paid work is better than free, especially if you need some money. So you can also start looking for contract work or part-time work to help you gain experience if you can get out of the classroom or your lab. Of course, it depends on how much time you have. Maybe your university has some paid research assistantships or some graduate assistantships that you can take on instead of just being a teaching assistant. You can look for those types of opportunities. So, for example, I had TA'd for a number of years. And the department offered me the opportunity to take on a whole new kind of role, which was mentoring TAs and facilitating teaching workshops. And I decided to do it because it was something new and different than the TAing I had been doing. And I knew it would be a different type of experience. And it was that opportunity that really helped me get my first professional full-time job. Now, if you're an international student, make sure you go to your International Students and Scholars Office to determine whether or not you can take on additional paid work. And for those of you that are in STEM, there might be some limitations on your contract about taking on additional work. So you definitely want to look into that before you start taking on other paid jobs. And then you can finally think about building a portfolio with some examples of projects where you applied your skills successfully to support projects. So you really want to think about how you're going to gain experience during your graduate education and training that then you can use as examples of skill application when you're applying for jobs. As I mentioned, skills-based hiring is really the way that most professions are going. And so being able to identify and talk about your skills is really, really important. And before we take questions, just a reminder that your next job is not going to be your last job. Once PhDs have some lived work experience, they tend to move up or move around very quickly. And so sometimes we hear, that PhDs are a little disappointed if they need to move into an entry-level position. But by moving into an entry-level position, you're going to gain more experience. You're going to get paid too because you're in a job. And it will put you in a position to move into another role much more quickly because you'll be gaining some of this on the job experience. So don't feel badly about an entry-level position. It is good experience for moving into your next job. And as a PhD, what we find is that PhDs, postdocs, they will move into their next job quite quickly. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing. That was a lot of information for the first day. Did we have any questions?
Lots of questions,
Yeah.
of course. And just before I start to go through them, we have a lot of questions that were submitted. Some I tried to type out answers to as we were going along, but we always receive more questions than we're able to respond to in a webinar time period. So if we don't get a chance to get to your question, please send us an email at member@beyondprof.com, and that will allow us more time to sit and reply to any questions you have. So I just wanted to say that right off the bat, just in case we don't get to all your questions, because there are just so many that come through and more come through kind of as we're answering them as well. But if I could group some of them maybe here. So you mentioned that sometimes hirers might be open to having conversations with applicants who only have, 50% of qualifications. And someone else asked that too. Like, what if my level of experience isn't quite within that 3 to 5 year range? do I still apply, or what happens? So could you expand on that point, please?
Yes, you should still apply. And you should definitely take some time to make sure that the experience and the skills that you have, you're communicating them in a way that a non-academic employer hiring for that position are going to understand. And so I mentioned the lesson that's about identifying marketable skills. We also have lessons that are about translating your experience for a non-academic employer and how you can align it with job ads as well, which would be a really good lesson if you're in that position where you're thinking about those types of jobs and wondering if you have enough experience. The other thing I'll say is when people hire, one thing that they look for maybe some kind of basic requirements where it's like, we absolutely need someone to be able to do this thing. And so sometimes in the job ad, they'll list like the requirements and then they'll list some like nice to haves. And so if you don't have all the nice to haves, really, usually those tend to be kind of more technical. There's things like an additional language or using a specific software. Like those nice to haves are the technical skills that people tend to think of first, which is really funny. But the like requirements often tend to be a lot of interpersonal type skills. And so this is why we also say like, don't neglect identifying those interpersonal skills because even if you have 50 or 60% of, what it is that the employer is looking for, but a lot of that is interpersonal. There's a good chance that you might get a interview because you look like a really good workplace fit. So often, regardless of like whether you have, a ton of outside experience, if it looks like you can learn, if it looks like you would match the mission and the culture of that workplace, you have a better or chance of receiving an interview. Now, I know I keep mentioning about the networking and the networking webinar and how important it is. That's going to be a really key piece as well. So I don't want to give too many spoilers because Diane's going to talk about networking. But what you should know is that a lot of jobs in North America either aren't even posted somewhere public or they're being hired through networks and referrals. So having that network is going to be really, really important beyond having a really good resume because having that professional connection is going to help your application kind of rise to the top. So, all that to say, yes, it is worth applying, even if you don't feel like you have that, 5 years of experience. But also, I think if you take some time to really identify what you've done over the last few years, what you'll find is you actually have more experience than you realize. So, it's that underlinear work experience, right? You've just done it in a different setting. So now it's about being able to communicate that you've done these things and that you have the potential to be able to do them in this new setting really well for employers.
Awesome. Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome.
So we had a couple of questions. AI is obviously on the minds of many folks. What skills or qualities um, have you found or noticed through research? Because we have been doing some work on this. What skills or qualities do employers most value? And someone else asked about digital literacy and if that was something that employers are really looking for these days. So perhaps you could speak to that and what we've kind of seen in the research that we've been doing around this.
Yeah, sure. So, definitely in that list of skills from, I guess, 2 years ago now, it was 2023, 24. The employers, most of those skills were interpersonal skills. So it was like communication, team player, being able to work with people from different backgrounds or different cultures. And then the very last one that was in there was digital literacy. But there was also very high on that list, like being adaptable and being flexible. So when it comes to, and we will talk a bit about AI on Thursday, but when it comes to any sort of technology, technology changes really quickly. And so it's less sometimes about being able to be really good with one particular type of technology and more about being able to adapt and be flexible when technologies change or new technologies are introduced. And so even when it comes to something like generative AI, most companies are still grappling with, is this useful? Is this useful for us? What does it mean for our particular career field? What does it mean for our industry? So it's still kind of, in many ways, early days. There are some companies who are looking for people who have some sort of AI literacy. So understanding, how to get the AI to hopefully give you the things that you need it to do or the answers that you need it to give you. But, beyond that, also having an ability to think ethically. So, with some of these new technologies, like understanding how the company might interact with those technologies. So, this is reading yourself into another field as well. Like, some companies are going to be like, oh my goodness, do not put anything through AI because all of a sudden you leave yourself open for to IP theft, right? So, it's knowing when certain technologies are actually going to be helpful, when they're actually going to be harmful, and part of that's about like critical thinking, being able to think in context, showing good judgment and ethics, as well as literacy paired with being able to be flexible and adaptable. 'Cause even, you could be really great at creating prompts for AI right now, but in 2 years, I bet you it's going to change pretty quickly. And so even I used to work with programs who would be working on the curriculum. And I remember working on a GIS program, and the faculty were like, oh, well, the students need to learn this and this and this and this. And they were specific technology names. And I was like, well, do they really need to know exactly how to use that? Or do they need to know the knowledge of that, but also how that could change and how to be adaptable? And so, what we saw from that list of what employers value, that ability to be adaptable is really high. And I think it's going to be really important, especially in the next few years, as we finally see kind of how generative AI shakes out one way or another. So, hopefully that helps.
Awesome. Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome.
For students with disabilities, do you have any advice on if, when, or how to disclose that to an employer? And does that differ whether it's in academia or industry?
Oh boy. It doesn't differ either way, I would say, unless it is sometimes, and I'm in Canada, but sometimes there'll be a posting for a job, and it is specifically set aside for someone who might have a disability or might have a certain world experience or life experience. That doesn't always happen. In those instances, obviously, it's okay to declare your disability because that's part of why they're hiring for whatever position. I would say in most cases, and not everyone gets to choose whether or not they disclose their disability, first of all. It's a bit of a privilege if you can hold back that information, but not everybody can for various reasons. However, I would say wait as long as you can to disclose that disability. You definitely, again, through your network, hopefully through people who work either in that industry or specifically at that company, you can get a sense of what type of accommodations would be possible, how you would go through that process negotiating with HR. Because usually when it comes to those accommodations after you've been hired, you're not necessarily dealing with your manager anyway, you're dealing with whoever runs HR, especially in kind of mid-sized to larger companies. So there wouldn't even really be a need to disclose that to the hiring committee because they're not the ones who are going to be making sure that you have that accommodation anyway. So I would say that I personally would wait. But if you do have a disability, and you already have gone through the process, especially if it's a hidden disability, if you've gone through the process of making sure that you have all your accommodation papers in line, so that when you have that job, you can say, oh, now, because of my neurodivergence, I have these recommendations from a doctor that says these are the types of accommodations that I'll need. And then you work with HR to do that. Again, they do need to accommodate you as a human right. And so hopefully in whatever employer that you end up with, they are very good about that. And most employers are used to that now too. Here in the year 2026, lots of other people have gone before us who have required accommodations and kind of made sure that that advocacy work has been done. So it's not as onerous as it used to be to get an accommodation. I will say that it is still emotionally exhausting because it's a bureaucratic process. So hopefully, again, that gives you a little idea of how those processes work as well. And why you don't necessarily, if you don't have to, you don't necessarily need to disclose right away. Now, if it's something like there's only stairs to this office, and I'm not going to be able to navigate those stairs, you are going to have to talk that through with your employer ahead of time because you'll probably have to come at least for part of an interview in person, and they are already going to have to accommodate you for that interview. So you should be able to negotiate that accommodation without any problem, though, because like I said, most employers are now at a place in time where they recognize that those accommodations need to be made and that there's a lot of value in having employees who are also disabled.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So we have two types of questions regarding timing of all of this. We have the
Right.
folks who are um, visiting or coming to this conference or visiting the platform who are a year or more out from graduation, so wondering how to approach their job search. And then we have those who are just close to graduation and wondering, how do I fast track this? So could you maybe speak to both kinds of groups that we'd have joining today?
Absolutely. Regardless of who you are, you're going to want to start building that professional network. I know for people who are really close to the end and in the process of now finally thinking about what's going to come afterwards, that might send you into a little bit of a panic. But we have lots of great strategies for how to build a professional community and some strategies for doing it quickly as well. And so you are going to want to talk to people. If you are someone who needs to find a job quite quickly, you're probably going to want to do that identifying skills lesson that I talked about, and then move right into that kind of research stage and narrowing down the career field and talking to people. Because you do need to do that. Like, I know what I've done. I know I can communicate it to employers. I know this is where I want to go next. You will find a job more quickly if you can focus your job search and you're not just like spamming people with your resume, right? And then that professional network, they're going to give you tips on, things to include on your hiring document, job opportunities that aren't posted, all those things. So either way, you want to network. If it's fast, you want to identify your skills and you want to do some of that research stage lessons. If you have a bit more time and you can feel a bit more leisurely about your job search, then I would suggest starting right in step one and doing that, like identifying your skills, your values, the things that energize you. Because what you'll find is that there are things that you really like about academia, and there are things that you don't like so much about academia. And those things, especially those motivators and some of those values, being able to identify them makes it more exciting to figure out what you're going to do next because there are lots of opportunities outside of academia where you can still feel really energized and it's going to align with your values. So take the time to do that step one, then take the time to do step two. Put right in your calendar that you're going to do some of this work. Like you're going to commit to your job search. So, whether depending on your time frame, whether that's a couple times a month, whether that's once a week, you can, depending on how much time you have, really kind of take your time to work through things a little bit more slowly. And then what happens in step three is that kind of implementation stage. That's when you're actually ready to apply for jobs. And so things like what does a resume look like, which, Diane's going to talk about tomorrow. Or how do I write a cover letter? Or how do I use LinkedIn, which I'll talk about a little bit on Thursday as well. So if you have more time, you can give yourself more time. If you don't have as much time, you're going to be very focused in the types of lessons that you choose from the platform. But either way, you should start talking to people and let them know, especially if you know which career path you want to move into, that that's something you're interested in, so that you can start building that professional community so that they can start helping you as well and informing you about these positions or some of the expectations in this new career field that's really going to help you as you put together your application documents too. Do you have anything to add to that, Diane?
No, I think that's really helpful for those who have time.
Yeah.
If you don't have time, as Susan mentioned, like networking is still really important. It does take time to build those relationships. I'm going to talk about this a little bit in my presentation, but it's just about like getting out there quickly and making as many contacts as you can. I'm going to mention in my presentation, like talk to people on campus who are already there, who have a variety of different jobs. This is something that Susan put together earlier in the year and that we love just repeating and reusing. Reach out to literally everyone you know and start talking about here's where I am in my job search. I'm going to be needing to find a position here. Here's some of, some skills, some things that I've done. What kinds of positions do you recommend? Where do you think I might be a good fit? Try and reach out to alumni, reach out to people who are in life in various ways. I often think it's so interesting to talk to people that I play hockey with to actually find out what they do 9 to 5, right? And it's many times things that you wouldn't even think of. So, get out there, get talking to people, and really make this a priority. Block off time in your calendar to, get started with this networking and get started in kind of the courses that Susan talked about if you haven't already kind of done those steps of figuring out, okay, what are my skills and what am I interested in kind of doing next to really try to, kind of jumpstart, supercharge some of this job search from now going forward.
Yeah, that's great.
And we're coming up to the end of our time here, so I think we'll stop there for the questions. As mentioned, and I'm going to put it in the general chat. If we did not get to your question, please feel free to email us, member@beyondprof.com, and we'll be able to take a little bit more time to answer your questions, especially in sharing just resources that we might have in the platform. And if you do have questions specifically about resumes or networking or LinkedIn, we have those presentations coming up this week. So I do hope that you come back either live or wait for the replay email. We're going to try and have the replays up the evening of that we've done the presentations so you can have them right away and can review the content. But otherwise, thank you so much. If you've registered and are here, it means we have your email and we will email you out the recording. Any final words there, Susan, before we log off?
No, just it's great that you joined us today. Make sure that you come back for the other webinars as well, because they are going to be extremely helpful for your job search. All
Awesome. Well, thanks
right.
so much, Susan, and see everyone tomorrow. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye.